this is Ree here. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. It really helps me a lot. And don't forget to check out my website, paradoxastrology.com. I can help you with anything. And if you like occult videos and would like exclusive ones that I don't post on YouTube, consider subscribing to my Patreon, and it also supports this channel. Thank you to everyone on there for supporting this channel. Okay, let's get into this video. Now we have the eclipse coming up, and that's going to be happening on April 19th and April 20th, depending on where you live in your time zone. So let's talk about that. So it's going to be in the Nakshatra Ashwini. That's in Aries. In the first house, we're going to have the sun, moon, Rahu, and Mercury. So Rahu and the sun and the moon are in Ashwini, and we have Mercury and Bharani. Right after the eclipse, we have several things that will happen. We have Jupiter that will be crossing from Pisces into Aries, which is the Gandanda, and what that can cause, going from a water sign to a fire sign, that can cause a lot of problems with disasters that have to do with water or fire, drownings, explosives, anything that Mars represents. This is usually because it's going from the water to the fire, it has that sizzle. So there's usually pretty explosive events that happen at that time. Now, Jupiter's not in a good condition right now because Saturn is aspecting Rahu and everything in between, which means Jupiter, and anything in Aries, Pisces, and in Aquarius, where Saturn is causing this effect. So we have the two malefics that are aspecting themselves. So that's decreasing all the planets in between, the power that they usually have. And Jupiter is already not in the best condition, so this could cause a lot more issues, like we saw with religious leaders. We saw issues like the Dalai Lama, for example, that had to do with a lot of the Jupiter combust as well, because Jupiter was almost exact combustion when that happened. Also, this has to do with finance, teachers, education, higher wisdom, and such things. So we could definitely see some huge events in regards to that. Right after the eclipse, we have Mercury, which will be going retrograde in Bharani Nakshatra, which will cause a huge transformation. I'll talk about that. And we also have Mars on the 21st, which will be entering Purnavasu Nakshatra, and I'll have another video about that, but we'll touch on that briefly. So the sun is going to be exalted at this time because it's in Aries and it's in Ashwini. The sun is what? Leaders. It's royalty. It can be the government as well, whoever is in charge. When we have this eclipse eclipsing the sun, it's kind of like Rahu is taking over the sun, and we could see a lot of people act out of ego, leaders acting out of ego, leaders being confused now, their energy is being eclipsed, so it's giving a sense of disillusion and illusions. It can also change the leaders as well. We could actually see a change of leaders in certain countries. This will, I know for sure, this will affect Canada. This is in Canada's first house. I haven't checked any charts of any other countries, but I have another one that we're going to talk about after. This could actually see some death of leaders, not only being replaced, but they could actually pass away. This could be from poisons, this could be from illnesses, intoxicants. We could see overdoses, things like that to leaders. It can also happen to people in general just because of the placement. So we have Mercury in Bharani, and we also have Mars, which is going to be in Gemini. So they're exchanging signs, but they're both malefics. Mercury in Bharani indicates a huge transformation. It's a huge transformation. Those of you who know Western astrology, you will understand this as a Pluto energy. It's a death and it's a rebirth of something. Mercury also is trade, and it is paper money. And we're seeing this, and I've been saying this in so many of my videos, that this is a switch to digital. And a lot of things will be going digital out of nowhere spontaneously. There will be some links to this in health as well, because Ashwini has to do with the celestial healers. Now, Mercury will be going retrograde in that after transforming how we communicate. Also, that has to do with business, trade, how we trade, things of that nature. This could also have to do with social media and how social media is used. This could be some legislation as well, especially in Canada. This is something that we in Canada were hoping wouldn't happen, but there could definitely be some legislation there. People will be very angry about it. Now, Mars is in Artara, which symbolizes the teardrop, and it is the storm ruled by Rudra, the storm god. So it indicates that this is some hard times that we need to get through in order to transform. Having the moon and the sun in Ashwini, this has to do with the celestial healers. The celestial healers were twins. They represent the dark and the light. It's like a paradox of opposing energies. So it's dark, light, good versus evil. It's also night and day. So there's two opposing energies here that will be very conflicted. Saturn is aspecting this, and Saturn is in the 11th house. That could be our alliances, that could be our friendships, that could be the people in general, because it's in Aquarius and it's in Shabahista, which has to do with the stars and the 100 healers. There's a lot of energy about healing, because Ashwini is about healing as well. It's about healing your past and rejuvenation, but it's almost in a negative aspect. So there could be some things brought to light about healing from the past that we realize weren't helpful to us, that kind of almost were poisonous to us. And there could be some other aspects of health come up. Now, Ashwini is a merchant class. It has to do with trade and business. It's how you nurture trade and business. It's also a new beginning. So something spontaneous could be happening with trade, with business, with communication, things of that nature that were always in place that will change spontaneously. Ashwini is the healing of all diseases. Now, there could be some new things that come out about healing, but there also could be a lot of people suffering because we have Jupiter in the 12th house. The 12th house has to do with hospitalizations, and it has to do with isolation. And Jupiter has to do with also husbands. There could be a lot of people that end up separating at this time because Ashwini is a very quick nakshatra. It's not good for things that are long term. It's very spontaneous, and it doesn't do well when it comes to relationships. And having Rahu there and Saturn could be releasing a karma. The horse is the symbol of Ashwini, and that has to do with swiftness, agility, power. It has to do with panic. This eclipse will be visible in Australia and Southeast Asia. So when it's visible in these areas, these are the areas that it will affect the most, but it will affect everybody in a certain type of way. So when I was researching more about this, when I was looking at the map, and I always use my higher self, so this is where a lot of this comes from. I was looking at the map, and what stood out to me was Jakarta. I don't know why. If you look at the map, it's not in the exact middle, but it's there, and it stuck out to me. And so I did a chart for the eclipse at that exact time in Jakarta. If you notice, right near the ascendant, almost on the ascendant, we have Mars. And so that got me really thinking about, yes, this could actually indicate some violent activity or some casualties. And especially Mars is the lord of Aries, where the eclipse is happening, and Rahu is there, which is earthquakes. And I looked it up, and actually on April 15th, there was a huge earthquake, and it was a 7.0 magnitude earthquake. So I think Jakarta needs to be careful, be very careful that there aren't more earthquakes or there aren't more disasters, because usually in mundane astrology, when we see a malefic right on the ascendant, that indicates some catastrophes that could occur. Ashwini is your dharma. It's represented by dharma. So it's about finding the purpose in life right now. And that will be hard for leaders to see at this time when this eclipse is the sun, and those who are ruled by the sun or sun ruled nakshatras. You could feel this type of confusion as well, or if you're in a sun dasha. So don't worry, it's usually the most confusing in the first few days, and then just keep doing your spiritual practices, and remember, you can transcend anything. So the whole point is to transcend your chart, is not to be stuck by your chart, to know what you're positive and what may be holding you back, and so you can transcend that. So don't be stuck by what I'm saying. So I've noticed some people who have placements in Aries lately have been having problems with the knees or the upper part of the feet, which is what this represents. So if you do have those problems, that is why. So it's better to do some mantras depending on your chart. I can't tell you exactly what mantras to do, but certain mantras will help you. Now, Ashwini is represented by, like I said, it's the horse, but Ashwini is the male horse, and the female horse is represented by Shabahista. And it's interesting that we have Saturn in Shabahista, which is actually aspecting by the third aspect Rahu in Ashwini, and this eclipse happening, right? So it's kind of showing how we've been having this male versus female war, and it seems to be ramping up a lot. And I think that's going to continue. Never get yourself into these me versus them. That's just your ego. That's why we're not supposed to attach ourselves to these things. So we see this kind of war playing out, and that will continue to play out, especially with Mars in Gemini. And Gemini is people who are trans and gay people as well. So this will continue. It's also ruled by Ketu. So Ketu is in Shawtee, and Shawtee is a businessman. And Ashwini also has to do with transport. And we could actually see a lot of problems with transport. This whole chart was showing me a lot of problems with transport because we have Mars in Gemini and a few other things. So also some problems with communications, telecommunication, that could be cyber attacks, things to do with the internet, advertising agencies, which have to do with Jupiter and Mercury, how we communicate with each other. And Ketu is just turning away, and having the Shawtee being business, it's turning away from certain businesses and how businesses were run. And it's also taking away certain businesses. It also has to do with destruction, quarrel, separation. It's also in Libra, a lot of couples being separated at this time, divorces, especially being in the 7th house. This is also getting rid of certain people in companies, starting new. So like I said, there's going to be a lot of polarity. Ashwini is also rule agriculture, and this is something that I talked about in my Guru Channel Yoga video, how that's playing out with Jupiter and Rahu in the same sign, which is considered a conjunction. And this exact conjunction will happen around the 22nd, I believe. So that will cause a very explosive events. This is agriculture. Saturn is agriculture as well. So I talked about this in my video about farmers being careful about poisons on their land, or this is in the 11th house, right? Saturn is in the 11th house, which represents the house of commons. So there could be some legislation, also legislation to do with Mercury, internet, and legislation that has to do with finance. That could be going digital or crypto. Caution to farmers and anyone in transportation. But regardless, this is a new beginning for a lot of people, and this could actually help people hit complete heights that they have never hit before. Ashwini can bring the old to young again, and it can make miracles and spontaneous things out of nowhere. If you're in tune with your spirituality, Ketu, which is ruled by this, and you do your mantras or your meditation or your yoga, whatever that is for you, you can be in tune with this and hitting new heights that you never expected financially, business-wise, especially if it has to do with communications and marketing, things like that. We see businesses hitting record lows as well. So that is definitely going to happen because we're on our way to a huge financial crash, if not at this time, very soon. Ashwini is also known as being naive. Because people will be in almost a more of a naive mindset, this will be a perfect opportunity for people who are business people who have less integrity to kind of pull the wool over somebody's eyes or get in some new laws and regulations that the people do not want, that are more for their own profit. This could shed light on the mistakes that leaders have made in the past as well. What this will affect is anything to do with horses, equestrian, sports, all types of healing, physicians, all the way to, astrologers, occult healers, yogi healers, all sports related jobs, transport industry, dance industry, mechanical engineers, businesses, business owners, shopkeepers, teachers, educators. We could see a lot more people in the hospital because of certain weather events. Having Mars in Ardara, Mars governs reading, newspapers, publishers, trade, commerce, and the telecom industry. So that is changing as well. And it'll be in the 3rd house. So that's why Mars in Ardara, there could be some things that have to do with transportation that can't get through because of weather issues. That could be storms with water. That could be storms with air like tornadoes, and any kind of storms at all. This will stop transportation. Venus will be in the second house of Taurus in Rohini, and Rohini is the ox cart. It has to do with transportation as well, but it also is the wheels of commerce. So being in the second house, that has to do with banks and revenue, the stock exchange. So this is good for banks in the stock exchange, but it doesn't look good for the overall finance of the people, because we have the moon, which is the fourth house lord, which is of the people, is going to be in Ashwini and going to be affected by this eclipse as well. And that is the people. So the people, not only the leaders, but the people will be very confused at this time. And it could cause anger. It could cause violent, explosive activities or things out of nowhere, people with weapons. This can escalate the war. The lord of the fifth house is with Rahu, which is the sun. And so the fifth house has to do with entertainment, the birth rate, sexual concerns, and gambling. So these things will be confused as well. Rahu can put you at the heights of things. So some people could win out of nowhere a huge amount of money, right? And that could put them in the ego a little bit confused of the heights of things. So it's not just negative. Also being in Ashwini, Ashwini has to do with truthfulness and bringing help. Because it's badly affected, I feel like there could be some weather issues and there's no help from the government of these places, which causes a lot of health issues. Or there could be accidents with transportation that cause health issues. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the eclipse and what I see. I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.